The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remaster is truly real, and Bethesda has even sponsored this video of ours, which is a massive win for us on two fronts, so thank you very much. As my first Elder Scrolls game and the reason this channel exists, I've been absolutely obsessed with the remaster since it dropped. Scott and I both getting to relive our favorite childhood game, while everyone who missed out gets to see it looking as real as we thought it did back in 2006, is a dream come true. I've been traveling around on my horse to see as much beauty as fast as possible, soaking in Cyrodiil's fresh new skin nearly 20 years later in 4K at 60 frames per second. Now, if you haven't already got this amazing game, you can click the link in the description to play it on PC, Xbox, or PS5, and by using this video, you'll get an excellent handle on everything you need to know as you enter Tamriel. Yes, there's a whole lot different between Oblivion and Skyrim, but we've also found that there's plenty of new things in the Oblivion Remaster that even Oblivion veterans should know about before they make their build. For example, some attributes even affect different damage types, and the skill milestone effects have been significantly reworked. So let's hop straight into Cyrodiil on our armored horses and begin this list of the 12 things you need to know before playing one of the best single-player RPG adventures of all time. Character customization can get just as crazy as before. If you're feeling wacky, you might make a blueberry pie-faced elf. You certainly can, but you can also make a pretty aesthetic character if you desire. Of course, you'll probably spend a lot of time looking at them in third person as you travel around, though I tend to use first person for most of the combat. You can customize your character's face endlessly, but the first thing you'll need to know when creating your character is the differences between the race choices available and the new addition of picking a race background. From what we've seen, these don't affect dialogue, but do change your starting attributes, like how male and female used to, but now don't. For example, you can be a Stronghold Orc or Orsinium Orc, or a Nord from Eastern or Western Skyrim, or a High Elf from Auradon or Somerset Isles. Each option has a little bit of flavor text to explain a bit of your backstory. However, instead of guessing as to how it affects your stats, you can just press the Open Stats button and see exactly how your background choice affects your attributes. While we're talking about races, it's a great time to cover how they do have significant differences compared to Skyrim due to such attributes. So in addition to having skill differences, which did feature in Skyrim, some races will just straight out start with more strength or more agility, and so on. These racial attribute and skill differences are also viewable in character creation using the same Open Stats button we just talked about, as are the Magicka bonuses High Elves and Bretons get. While you can level all skills to 100, the ones that start out with bonuses make a big difference to your playthrough, as do attributes, and you can feel that difference from the very early stages of the game. For the most enjoyable experience, we'd still recommend prioritizing a race for role-playing purposes, or simply because you really like them from a lore perspective. We've got heaps of lore videos on the channel if you are new to the Elder Scrolls. Each race also possesses their own powers and passives, far more drastic than in Skyrim. High Elves not only gain 100 more points of Magicka, but also a 75% resistance to disease and a 25% weakness to fire, frost, and shock. Argonians have full immunity to poisons, a 75% resistance to disease, and can breathe underwater. Wood Elves are yet a third race with a 75% resistance to disease, and they have the Beast Tongue power to once a day command a creature to fight for them for 60 seconds. However, this is only good for creatures level 5 and under. Bretons possess a hefty 50% magic resistance, and get 50 more points of Magicka and a dragon skin power to use once a day to gain 50% shield, which is basically 50 armor rating for 60 seconds. Now, considering that armor rating is capped at 85 and functions as a percentage of physical damage that your armor absorbs, this is super strong. Dark Elves have a 75% resistance to fire and can summon an Ancestor Guardian Ghost once a day to fight for them for 60 seconds. Don't forget that NPCs have these racial passives, so if you fight a Dark Elf, don't use fire against them. Imperials have 2 once a day powers, also called greater powers. Star of the West lets them absorb 100 points of fatigue on touch, and Voice of the Emperor is a ranged power that does 30 points of charm for 30 seconds, useful for raising disposition before haggling with merchants or trying to get someone to tell you something. Khajiit get the Eye of Night lesser power, meaning it can be cast multiple times unlike greater powers, and this one costs nothing to use to gain Night Eye, basically night vision. They also have the Eye of Fear greater power to demoralize a target up to level 25 once a day, making them flee for 30 seconds. Now you should know that in Oblivion, up to level 25 means any level, even beyond 25. Nords have a 50% resistance to frost and gain the Nordic Frost greater power to dish out 50 points of frost damage on touch once per day. Even if you're not a mage, that's a great thing to use early on. They also have a greater power called Woad, which provides 30% shield for 60 seconds. Useful for sure, though not as good as the Breton's dragon skin power. Orcs, very neatly, get a passive 25% resistance to magic, and also have the Berserk power to once a day boost their fatigue by 200 points, their health by 20, their strength by 50, but drain their agility by 100. Great for killing things on a 60-second time frame. Fatigue is the same thing as stamina in Skyrim, by the way. Redguards have 75% resistance to both poison and disease, and have the Adrenaline Rush power to once a day gain 50 points of agility, endurance, speed, and strength, and boost their health by 25 points for 60 seconds. The second thing you need to know is that Oblivion has you choose a birth sign early on in the tutorial. Unlike standing stones in Skyrim that you can just change, these birth signs are fixed, and will provide you with certain boosts, sometimes powers, that will help make your character feel more distinct from the beginning. It's easy to think that these birth signs in the remaster are the exact same as the original, because they all are, except the Lord sign. The Lord sign now increases armor rating by 15 and gives 15% magic resistance. This is a great option for most builds, extremely useful from the early stages and in the endgame, especially stacking it with magic resistance from other sources, or simply using it alongside the shield magic granted by some racial powers. The other signs are the Warrior sign, which grants plus 10 to strength and endurance, the Thief sign, which grants plus 10 to agility, luck, and speed, the Steed sign, which grants plus 20 to speed, and the Lady sign, which gives you plus 10 to endurance and willpower. Additionally, there's the Mage sign to get plus 50 with no side effects, and the Apprentice sign to get plus 100 magicka, but also a 100% weakness to magic, which is a pretty serious drawback. The Atronach sign gets a massive 150 extra magicka, as well as 50% spell absorption, which in Oblivion is a chance to absorb the entire spell into your magicka pool. However, these benefits are given in exchange for completely removing your magicka regen. It's a very cool sign for specific build setups, like our Sorcerer build we recently released. The Lover sign grants you a power called Lover's Kiss, which can be used once a day to paralyze an opponent for 10 seconds, but it costs 120 points of fatigue. If your fatigue drops below 0 because of an effect, like a power, enemy poison, or enemy spell, you actually fall over. It's not something that will happen from jumping or swinging a weapon though, if you have nothing else lowering your fatigue. The Ritual sign gives you the blessed word lesser power to turn undead away for 30 seconds, and again the level 25 here means it's uncapped. It can be used multiple times a day for 40 magicka a pop. It also gives you a once a day power called Mara's Gift, which restores 200 points of your health, a literal lifesaver. The Shadow sign lets you turn invisible once a day for 60 seconds, which is great for stealth builds, though later on isn't as useful if you're just really good at staying hidden or simply unlock standard invisibility magic. The Serpent sign gives you the Serpent spell greater power to once a day damage a target's health for 60 points total, though it's 3 points a second for 20 seconds. It also cures poison affecting you, and it dispels 90 points on self, which is an effect that removes magical effects currently troubling you. It costs 100 points of fatigue and is a bit of a random power, but it can have its moments. Finally, there's the Tower sign with the Tower key power that lets you open an average level lock automatically automatically once a day, and the tower warden power to also once a day reflect 5% of all incoming melee damage for 120 seconds. It's not that crazy, though it does let you unlock the reflect damage effect for custom spellmaking. The third thing you'll need to know is that you'll have to choose a class or make a custom class towards the end of the tutorial. It'll give you significant boosts to your attributes and skills in combination with the bonuses granted by your birth sign, race, and background choices, and it affects the leveling speed of your skills. Making a custom class could feel pretty necessary back in the original Oblivion due to the way that leveling worked. You may have heard Oblivion had complicated leveling, and what people were referring to was that the attribute boosts you could select at each level up actually changed in amount based on the skills you increased during that level. This meant that when it came to choosing major skills, people would leave some skills they actually planned on using as minor skills so that they could level them up a lot and get lots of specific attribute points at their level up, while also not making their leveling speed for their character too fast. Anyway, that's all scrapped now, so you can safely have fun. Sure, some people may choose to avoid leveling certain skills on purpose, but generally speaking, you can just slot in major skills as things you want to use most and have a good time, because at every level up you always get 12 points to allocate to attributes. More on that later. Classes all have 7 major skills, 2 favored attributes, and a specialization type of either combat, magic, or stealth. Favored attributes get a +5 boost, as do the skills that fall within the specialization type you choose. For example, the magic specialization gives a +5 boost to alchemy, alteration, conjuration, destruction, illusion, mysticism, and restoration. You get the idea. The major skill selection makes 7 skills of your choice, or those part of your chosen class, level much faster and get a significant +20 boost straight out of the sewer gate. Minor skills level at a slower standard rate, however, unlike the original game, all skill leveling will contribute to your character level. That said, because major skills level faster, and you plan on using them the most, probably, you can think of them as the things that will still contribute mostly to your leveling progress. Skills in your specialization also level a bit faster, so there's different speeds, with a minor skill outside your specialization leveling the slowest, and a major skill in your specialization leveling the fastest. Classes are somewhat unchanged in the remaster, however, the related attributes we keep talking about are a little different, as are the skill bonuses you unlock at certain skill ranks. So Sky Babies and Moroboomers both need to know what's new. What attributes now do is the fourth thing you need to know. Unlike Skyrim, you don't pick between the basic stats, as in health, magicka, and fatigue on a level up, as they are affected by your attributes. These attributes are strength, intelligence, willpower, agility, speed, endurance, personality, and luck. Intelligence determines your maximum magicka, and speed determines how fast you move, so no real differences there. However, attributes affecting fatigue have changed. Instead of combining 4 different attributes to work out your fatigue, willpower will increase your max fatigue greatly, with agility affecting it slightly, though also determining how quickly it regenerates. Willpower also determines your magicka regen. Agility previously boosted damage done by ranged attacks, basically archery, cold marksman in Oblivion, and it still does. However, very importantly, agility also affects the amount of damage you deal with daggers and short swords, something previously affected by strength. Keep that in mind for your build. Strength affects your damage with longswords, claymores, basically greatswords in Oblivion, maces, war axes, battle axes, warhammers, and your bare hands. But it will not affect short swords and daggers at all. I love the new short sword and dagger animations, by the way. Strength will improve your carry weight, and very interestingly, it does slightly increase your max health as well, which makes the massive boost endurance gives it a little less dominant. However, endurance is still a super important stat and increases your maximum health dramatically. Very importantly, you must know that endurance is retroactive now. Previously, it wasn't, which meant that many builds were forced to prioritize endurance early on so they'd accrue higher amounts of health on each level up and not end up with lower health later on. Now this isn't the case, so you can start with Endurance High and all the benefit it brings, or catch it up later and end up at the same health as if you started with higher Endurance. Endurance also increases how quickly you regenerate health outside of combat, which is a brand new thing that didn't occur in Oblivion, though does now, more like Skyrim. Personality affects how much NPCs like you, aka disposition, and this heightened disposition leads to better information gathering during quests and helps foster better haggling for buying and selling. You'll be able to view an NPC's disposition towards you and raise it when activating the speech minigame, where you cycle between all the options of admire, boast, joke, and coerce in the best order that you can, clicking the largest wedges when there's something the NPC will like or love, and selecting the smallest ones when they fall into the areas they dislike or hate. After the first round in the remaster, where you'll have to read facial expressions like you did in the original, you'll unlock colors indicating the NPC's feelings towards each choice. Also, some of the new voice actors are just amazing.
Talk tough to me. I love tough guys.
Bribing is more efficient the higher your speechcraft is, though charm spells can be used instead, raising disposition temporarily. Personality, affecting disposition, which allows you to haggle better, still isn't as important for improving haggling and buying and selling prices as the mercantile skill, which is a separate skill to speechcraft in Oblivion. That all said, there's another attribute after personality: luck. Luck is hard to test. The description in the remaster says it affects all your skills, having an effect on everything you do. In the original game, it would increase a skills level behind the scenes at least by 40% of the luck points you've had over 50. So 70 luck would see your skills increased by 8. Sounds decent, but the problem is that you can only boost it by 1 point at a time per level up, making it incredibly inefficient to choose. In the remaster, you gain those 12 points to allocate to attributes per level up, but allocating just 1 point to luck wastes 4 of them. In the original game, luck didn't affect loot, though it did affect betting in the arena, and also the chance of banishing a foe with Mehrunes Razor. But look, outside of very niche builds or role-playing reasons, you're almost always better off prioritizing your other attributes. If luck has secretly been enhanced in the remaster, someone will eventually figure it out, but so far it appears it's still not all that useful. The fifth thing you need to know is that the Oblivion Remaster skills actually have new rank-related effects. To Skyrim players, this is the closest thing you'll get to perks. So in Oblivion, you unlock skill ranks at the milestones of level 25, 50, 75, and 100. Under 25 is referred to as a novice skill level, 25 as apprentice, 50 as journeyman, 75 as expert, and 100 as master. The effects unlocked have been changed quite a lot, so you'll want to keep all this in mind when planning your playthrough. The changes in effect can be small, such as Armorer, which keeps the same milestone effects for expert and master, but switches apprentice and journeyman around, allowing you to repair magical gear earlier on. Athletics makes sprinting, which is a new feature in Oblivion, cost no fatigue when you reach the master level of 100, allowing you to sprint endlessly and fast. The weapon skills are pretty interesting, as Blade, Blunt, and Hand to Hand previously all had a sideways power attack with a chance to disarm at Journeyman, a backwards one with a knockdown chance at Expert, and a forwards one at Master with paralysis chance. Now they're more distinguished. For example, getting Blunt to Journeyman allows you to temporarily gain a shield buff from doing power attacks. Expert Blunt makes your regular attacks have a slight chance to silence opponents, which is an effect that prevents magic casting. And then Master Blunt increases the shield effect granted from power attacking. Blade, on the other hand, besides making blade weapons more durable, can make your power attacks with bladed weapons apply weakness to normal weapons to your opponent once you reach skill level 50. Expert Blade gives your regular attacks a slight chance to cause bleeding damage, and Master makes that weakness to normal weapons effect applied by power attacks even stronger. Blade and Blunt, by the way, are how melee weapon skills exist in Oblivion, allowing you to use one- and two-handed weapons for your build so long as they're of the same type, like a longsword or claymore versus a warhammer or war axe. Block previously gained a chance to do a knockback counterattack with your shield, staggering the enemy, but now Expert Block unlocks a shield bash you perform as desired, and Master makes this bash much more powerful. I honestly think that Oblivion, with these effects, plus all the attributes affecting things as well, provides a bunch of build complexity similar to what Skyrim's perks contribute, just without the perk point system, not to mention many of those points went into basic damage boosts anyway. Honestly, I actually think it's more complex than Skyrim. What's also of note is that acrobatics dodges are unlocked at skill level 25 instead of 50. However, instead of epic backflips and somersaults, the dodges are smaller, more practical movements. However, I find they're a little more effective than the original ones, which mostly just looked cool. So when you're playing Oblivion, be sure to open up your menu and have a good look at your skills and where they can take you. Thing number 6 that you need to know is how leveling works. Like I mentioned earlier, the complex method of intentionally grinding minor skills, often unrelated to your role-playing build, is no longer required to get the biggest attribute boosts. Instead, you just level up any skills, with the total XP gain getting you to the next level, more similar to Skyrim's system. Higher leveled skills going up another level, like taking Destruction from 99 to 100, as you'd expect, count more towards your level up than a low level skill going up one level, like Alchemy going from 15 to 16. Once you've leveled up and have this symbol show on the screen, you'll actually need to go to a bed and sleep in order to initiate the level up, as there's no option to do it mid-battle like in Skyrim, where we've all cheated our health bar back to being full before we could be slain. While there's bedrolls found around in different places outdoors and beds in the halls of factions you can join, or in player homes if you've got one, always remember you can go to any inn on the road or a tavern in a city and rent a room for 10 or 20 septims or so to level up. It's always worth the coin, and it's fun to travel to new places with the desire to level and potentially stumble across a new quest. If you're ready and you sleep, even for an hour, you'll level up. The menu opens up with a fun little message on screen, and you'll find yourself with 12 virtues to allocate, and you're only able to put a maximum of 5 into any specific attribute, simulating the same maximum feel achievable in the original game if you grinded skills specific to that attribute. So you could do +5 strength, +5 endurance, and +2 speed, or +4 in personality, speed, and intelligence. You get the idea, so long as it adds up to 12 and doesn't exceed 3 attributes. Just remember that allocating just a single point to luck consumes 4 virtues, and again, we don't really think it's worth it outside of very niche builds. Definitely not your first build if you're new to the game. Upon leveling up, you'll gain an increase in health no matter what, and of course you'll end up with more if you're pumping up strength and endurance, but you only get an increase to magicka or fatigue if you allocated to attributes that affect them. Carry weight also remains the same unless you boost strength. The 7th thing you need to know is all about the crafting skills, so to speak. I'm including things like armor here, even though it more so relates to repairing the things you've got. While armor can get to a point where you can improve weapons and armor beyond their standard damage or protection, it's primarily a skill used to make sure your gear is in tip-top shape. All you need to do is make sure you have repair hammers on hand, which you can buy at general goods stores and find around different locations, and then simply click it in your Misc Items tab and start selecting gear to boost the condition of. But you can't do it in battle. Repair hammers have a chance to break each time they're used, so you'll always want to keep a few on hand, not just one. As the condition of your gear deteriorates, it can be worth less if you have a low mercantile skill, and it becomes less effective. Gear can break entirely, remaining in your inventory until you fix it, but being completely useless. While not every character needs to prioritize the armorer's skill, it is a good one to use, though you can also just pay certain vendors who possess the skills to repair your broken gear. There's even magical effects that help to disintegrate weapons and armor, and these can be used by you against your foes or by them against you to turn the tide of battle. The Alchemy skill also features in Oblivion, and you can use it to make a nice bit of coin. You won't need to go to alchemy tables like you do in Skyrim. Instead, you can create potions by mixing ingredients on the go, outside of combat of course, by selecting a mortar and pestle in your inventory in the Alchemy tab. You'll find a novice one during the tutorial part of the game, but there are other alchemical pieces of gear, the retort, calcinator, and alembic, that you can add to improve your alchemical creations. There's some intricacies in how the potency is calculated we can talk about another time, but just know these items tend to help make your potions better, especially when you buy or find better versions of these pieces of gear above the novice level. Recognizing the alchemical properties of an ingredient is something that you get better at the higher your alchemy skill is. The 8th thing that you need to know is that enchanting is not a skill, nor is spellmaking, but both of these things do feature and are available via specific altars. Enchanting can be done through the Arcane University, which you gain full access to after joining the Mages Guild and completing the recommendation quests at the faction halls found in each city, except Kvatch of course, and the Imperial City, as that's where the university is. There's also the option to get an enchanting altar set up in the player home Frostcrag Spire, though for brand new players this home may be costly to furnish, though definitely not impossible. The enchanting altar specifically requires a box of mage tallow candles you buy from the Spire's related vendor for about 2,000 septims if you have a high mercantile skill, otherwise you may find they're a bit more like 3,000 septims, and you'll need to buy another box for the spellmaking altar. Anyway, enchanting is similar to Skyrim in the sense that you need to use a filled soul gem on an unenchanted item. You can only choose from magic effects you have access to, not through disenchanting weapons, which isn't a thing. It needs to be through spells you have and can cast, or powers you have. You can define the parameters of the effects you wish to enchant an item with, and the extent to which you can enhance all the effects will depend on the strength of the soul gem. You'll also need to pay gold to enchant an item. Weapons, of course, have a charge which runs out, whereas apparel gains a permanent buff that doesn't run out. However, your apparel can only be given one enchantment, whereas weapons can be given multiple. There are items in the game that you can wear with more than one effect, you just can't craft any. The more powerful you make a weapon's enchantment, the less uses it will have before requiring a recharge. The soul gem strength also affects this, so a grand soul gem will provide more uses than a petty soul gem if the damage type and magnitude are kept the same. We can make more in-depth enchanting guides, but for now you should also know that when you close an Oblivion gate by taking the sigil stone within it, you can also use that to enchant a piece of gear for free. The sigil stone is the only thing used in this process, and they come with 2 assigned enchantments chosen after you pick it up, one for apparel and one for weapons. Sigil stones are level dependent, meaning that your level will determine how strong it is. At level 17 you get the best ones called Transcendent Stones. Because the effects are chosen when you pick the stone up, you should know that if you really want to, you can save right before picking it up, or technically even after if the inventory icon hasn't appeared on the screen yet, and then keep loading back until it pops into your inventory with the effects you want on it. Regardless of whether you want to do that, these stones are a great way to enchant if you don't want to spend the gold required or don't have access to enchanting altars. Like Skyrim, enchantments are a game changer and extremely powerful for your build. To recharge a weapon, you can use a vendor with the required skills like certain Mages Guild members in one of the city halls, or use a soul gem in your inventory that you bought, found, or filled yourself. You can trap souls into a soul gem by hitting a target with a soul trap spell or soul trap enchanted weapon, then slaying them. Just remember, only black soul gems can hold mortal souls. There's also rare stones called Vala stones you can find in Ayleid Ruins, which can be used to recharge all enchanted gear in your inventory. There's also Welcome stones in Ayleid Ruins that have nothing to do with enchanting, but they can be used and then disappear to restore all your magicka, so be sure to pick those up if you're a magic using build, especially if you're using the Atronach stone. Also, a quick tip I have with enchanted gear is not to buy it. Sure, it's not a blanket rule, there might be some really specific item you desire to purchase, but as a general rule of thumb, they're not worth the septims, and you'll be better off enchanting pieces of gear yourself, finding enchanted gear as loot, or just receiving powerful enchanted items like Daedric artifacts. The ninth thing you need to know about is custom spellmaking. This could definitely have a whole guide done on it to show you all the chaotic possibilities, but in a nutshell, you do this through a similar spellmaking altar, also accessible at the Arcane University or in the Frostcrag Spire home after purchasing the requisite candles. I should also make a video on all the player homes, as some of them are very easy to access due to originally being DLC, and you just have to know where they are so you can get their related quest about setting them up to activate. Spellmaking, just like enchanting, requires gold to finalize, and also requires you to have access to the spell effect via a spell you can cast, or a power you've acquired, or even have due to your race choice or birth sign. It allows you to combine multiple effects into one powerful spell, like paralyzing a target and setting them on fire while putting a shield spell on yourself. And you can choose if you want it to be touch-based or ranged, how long it lasts, if it affects an area and how big of an area, and so on. Do note that you don't need to know the touch version of the spell, for example, to make it touch-based. You just need to know the base effect in some capacity. The more overpowered the spell, the more gold it will cost, and the harder it will be to cast. Generally speaking, you won't be able to craft spells that you're not able to cast. In Oblivion, you simply cannot cast a spell if you don't have the skill level for it. You are denied access to a journeyman level destruction spell, for example, until your destruction is 50. The higher your skill level, the lower the casting costs of spells related, but again, only of the spells you actually have the skill level to cast. That said, you can still use spellmaking to make spells you don't have the magical pool for, so keep a lookout for that. Interestingly, we've noticed that combining lower magnitude effects with destruction magic is more casting cost effective than one large magnitude effect of the same total damage. So what I mean by that is having a spell that does 30 frost damage and 30 fire damage for 60 damage total costs less to cast than one fire damage spell that deals 60 damage. The 10th thing you should know is that the magic system in general is different in Oblivion. You do not equip spells into your left hand and right hand slots like you do in Skyrim. In Oblivion, you use the magic menu to assign a spell or power to the spell button. The spell button can be activated to unleash your one equipped spell or power, regardless of if you've got your hands full with a massive battle axe, a sword and shield, or a bow. You can hotkey spells to switch between them mid-battle for spell slinging convenience. This makes Battle Mage playthroughs particularly fun, however this doesn't mean that every mage needs to use weapons, because attribute opportunity cost is still a thing. So if you have low strength and don't focus on leveling any melee skills because you dispatch everything with magic, then a longsword won't be that useful. You may still want to wield something though, just to block unavoidable attacks instead of receiving their full damage. Of course, if you wish to use a melee weapon and magic as part of your main play style, go for it. Spell sword builds are sensational. Wearing armor, on the other hand, changes something called spell effectiveness. This percentage, shown in your magic screen, will tell you how effective your spells are, and it's basically affected by wearing armor. The idea is to give mages an advantage for only wearing clothes, although they gain high armor rating using shield magic too. If your spell effectiveness is 80%, then a 50 damage spell will only do 40 damage. If a spell has no magnitude, then the duration is affected. Wearing any armor will mean you can only get 95% spell effectiveness max, regardless of your armor skill. The lower your armor skill, the lower your spell effectiveness will be when wearing armor, generally with the worst possible being 80%, though it increases gradually until you get to Journeyman in your armor skill, or skill level 49 actually, in my personal testing, and then the 95% cap applies. The more armor slots you have filled, the more spell effectiveness is negatively affected. Thankfully, powers are not affected by spell effectiveness. While 95% is perfectly fine for builds who wish to wear armor and use magic, one area where it can take a toll is on low magnitude spells because the damage always rounds down. For example, if you make a spell that does 30 damage for 20 seconds and you have 95% spell effectiveness, the 3 damage rounds down from 3 to 2, taking away far more than 5% from the end result. Illusion spells also face trouble, particularly if they affect an enemy at level 25, as then it will only affect an enemy at level 23. The reason this is so bad is because, as we've talked about, these level 25 spells affect all level enemies, so your illusion spells, which you were using on everything, now have a cap on them. Something to keep in mind for a puppeteer build. The 11th thing you should know is that magic is full of diverse effects, some of which you may be unfamiliar with. I'll give you an overview so that you know of all the spell possibilities and the magic schools they belong to. Illusion has charm spells to raise disposition, it has silence to prevent a target from using magic, and even has light spells, and spells to cause fear, calm, or frenzy, or rally targets. There's command humanoid and creature to turn them to your side, as well as Night Eye and Chameleon, which basically makes you semi-invisible, but you keep the ability to interact with the world. It's great if you get it super high, but at the same time, if you're good at stealth, you won't really need it, and if you're terrible at stealth and you throw on a little chameleon, you'll probably still get caught. Conjuration does what you'd expect, and Oblivion has a much larger list of summons than Skyrim. There are also more bound weapons and even bound armor. Necromancy isn't really a main playstyle thing you need to think about, and only features in limited ways that I don't want to spoil if you haven't played before. Conjuration also has Turn Undead instead of it being in the Restoration School, though Restoration still has more than healing. It can also restore your fatigue or fortify your base stats and attributes. It also allows you to absorb enemy stats, skills, and attributes, literally increasing your damage with your axe, for example, as your enemy becomes weaker. You can even cure diseases, and allies paralysis, and resist magic. Destruction has the basic elemental damage types you know of, as well as spells to damage stats, drain stats and skills, to cause weakness to elements, magic in general or poison, and even to disintegrate weapons and armor. The Alteration School features the shield spell we've mentioned, similar to Skyrim's flesh spells, as well as elemental shields. It has many fun utility spells like water walking and water breathing, and even open spells that work in place of having to lockpick your way into doors and chests. There's also spells that affect weight, like Feather, to decrease the weight of items you're carrying and therefore make you run faster. Keep in mind it increases your carry capacity when you check your menu, but in reality it reduces your weight and therefore equipped weight and helps you move quicker. Burden does the opposite and will slow enemies down substantially if it's strong enough. Just be careful, because if someone burdens you enough, you can become over-encumbered. Mysticism is the wild card here that many would be unfamiliar with. A lot of its effects were blended into Alteration or even Conjuration in Skyrim. In Oblivion, it has Soul Trap, Detect Life, Spell Absorption, which is a chance to fully absorb an entire spell, Reflect Spell, a chance to fully reflect a spell, and Reflect Damage, which reflects a set percentage of melee damage every time, though a spell version of Reflect Damage is only unlockable through custom spell making. There's also Dispel, which gets rid of magical duration spell effects currently bothering you. It also has Telekinesis, which is fun, but it's not crazy useful, and newly in the Oblivion Remaster it has Clairvoyance to show you how to go towards your quest marker. The 12th and final thing to know is how to join all the factions and start the main DLCs. Essentially, how to take part in all the amazing content on offer in Oblivion. I'll be keeping any spoilers very light. To join the Mages Guild, simply enter any local hall and ask to join. Same thing for the Fighters Guild, though your options there are only in Anvil, Cheydinhal, and Coral. You can't join the Mages Guild or the Fighters Guild if you have a bounty. For the Dark Brotherhood, just murder an innocent NPC, and you'll definitely realize what to do the next time you sleep. For the Thieves Guild, there's a few methods. You can read one of the wanted posters all around the Imperial City, then ask a beggar about the Grey Fox after raising their disposition. The Garden of Dareloth you get told to go to is this location here in the waterfront district of the Imperial City. Just show up at midnight, complete the quest, and you'll get in. Another way into the Thieves Guild involves being contacted after going to jail in the Imperial City city and serving your time. After being released from prison, just wait for a few hours and you'll be contacted and given a note to kick things off. Anyway, if you're feeling more heroic, you may wish to join the Arena faction in the Imperial City by simply heading down into the Bloodworks area and speaking to Owen. To begin the Knights of the Nine DLC, you'll want to talk to the Prophet in Anvil. Everyone will be talking about an attack, and NPCs in the city will be quick to talk to you about the Prophet and the chapel if you explore conversation with them. For the Shivering Isles DLC, which I must say looks incredible in the remaster, you'll want to spend 24 hours in-game until you're prompted with a quest to investigate rumors of an island that suddenly appeared in Nibbin Bay. Stay here and enjoy what unfolds, and you'll eventually be granted access to go through a portal and experience a huge new world full of amazing quests, gear, and madness. Just keep in mind that many things in Oblivion are leveled, and it can be more rewarding doing the DLCs later on, especially after the main story if you're going to be doing that. But ultimately, I do really love to just go do whatever quests are calling out to me and have the most enjoyable time possible. And that concludes 12 things you need to know before playing the Oblivion Remaster. Another massive thank you to Bethesda for sponsoring this video. Be sure to click the link in the description to play The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered on Xbox, PC, and PS5, if you haven't entered Cyrodiil already. Subscribe for tons of incoming Oblivion content, check out the stuff we've already done. My name's Michael, and I'll be back to nerd out with you again very soon.